a novella length is a full television episode, and then chapters are more like a scene before a commercial break. That's the way that I personally structure them, because you have something that keeps people coming back after the commercial break. Is very important when you're doing my stuff, which is online serial fiction. You want to make sure they stay subscribed or they put by the next episode or chapter.
Well, we did the same thing with a cliffhanger at the end of each episode.
Exactly, yeah.
Or at the end of each chapter.
Or at the end of each act, or what
Not
they...
so much when we did Spider-Man. That was a lot more freeform.
Well, let's go ahead and introduce ourselves. How briefly just introduce yourself. Tell people who you are.
I'm Doug Murray. I wrote the Dam. I wrote a lot of other stuff. I've been in this business for more than 60 years. And I started with Famous Monsters in 1960.
My name is Richard Shellbach. Please call me Rich. And I have been doing this for just shy of 40 years. And print-wise, I've also worked for FM, but I did under Phil Kim's FM. I've written, for television, I've written Alf, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Crisscross, a few other things. I've had almost 50 scripts produced.
I'm Anthony Taylor, and besides writing this convention, along with my partner.
Sorry. Hey, did you know it's time to start?
That's right, man. The Empire's coming. I'm also a writer, and I am the player to be named later to take the place of Steve Coulter, who had to honor a last-minute professional commitment. So I'm the bargain basement here. I also have worked for Phil Kim's FM. Sponsors.
Did you write a book about like the toys for Space Neptune or something, Anthony?
No.
I thought that was you.
I could.
I got it.
That might have been John Muir. He's a big Space 1999 toy guy. I have written for animation a couple of scripts. I have written licensed Thunderbirds novel, so that qualifies since it's a television series that I did a novel based on.
I agree, qualifies.
And I also write for Screen Magazine, Retrofan Magazine, all about television and film stuff. I have quite a few things laying around on my hard drive.
Yeah, we did a
Wonderful
script
TV
here
series.
years ago.
That's correct, yes. Doug and I worked together on a script called, back when
Tyrannosaurus Rex.
it's Tarantulosaurus Rex. Back when Sci-Fi Channel was so deeply into the Sharknado. Which was actually a whole lot of fun, and I still hope at some point we will be able to do something with that. Yeah. So I have that going for me, which is nice. And then there's Aubrey, our moderator, and serial writist.
Serial writist, I like that.
Serial
And
Yeah.
well, it was the zombies, it wasn't me. But so let's start with something to get us warmed up. Let's start about what got you started. Like, is there a first project that you have your name on? Is it something that you call your start into television writing?
When I did Spider-Man with Gregory, it was because Greg Morrow was a very close friend, and he asked me to. I didn't have thought about it otherwise. I didn't get paid much, but I did 8 episodes.
There was a local kids show in Connecticut called JJTX and Friends, and I knew people on the show, and they said, we just got a budget to go to Philadelphia. Why don't you write something and we'll shoot it on film instead of shooting it on video. And we have the budget for that, and so that was my first script. In 1984, I got a whopping $300 for that.
Yeah, that's like almost $600 now.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, there's that.
I guess my journey's a little shorter than that. I have written a lot about television programs and the production of them in the past, but I have a good friend in New Zealand who has done a couple of movies and had told me 2 years in advance before it ever came on television that they were doing a new series of Thunderbirds. And I said, well, I would be remiss in not saying I'd like to pitch you some ideas for episodes. He's like, oh yeah, great, that's fine. So I had done a couple of pitches for them, and as it wound up, he kept working on the feature films, and the animated series went to another guy who had worked on 10 and a bunch of other stuff. Very good writer, good showrunner, a guy named Rob Hoagie. But I just kind of bounced off Rob because I didn't have any practical experience writing for television. So another friend named Lee Springer, who's a director of animation.
You know me too.
Yeah, Lee's a great guy. Got in touch with me a few months later and said, hey, I'm producing, or I'm directing episodes of this series called Paddle Pop in Bangkok, where he was living at the time. And it's a Unilever production, which is basically geared to sell cereal to kids.
So,
Yeah.
Unilever's-
And so he had 2 episodes out of a 9 or 10 episode series that he needed written, and he pitched them to me. The first one as a take on the Magnificent Seven. I'm like, oh, I'm so there for that. And then the next one was it's about a guy who has a big ship that swallows up submarines, just like in The Spy Who Loved Me. I'm like, all right, I'm sold. So I wrote those 2 for them, and it was the studios that did Mango, the Johnny Depp kind of like chameleon lizard.
Yeah, the chameleon western.
Right. So they did some great animation for it, and it turned out really well. I'm very proud of them, and they are. If you search through my website at taylorcosm.com, you can find links to them on my hidden channel, because I'm not supposed to be sharing them, or I wasn't when I put them up to watch them. And I sent those to Rob Hoagie at Thunderbirds Our Show. He's like, oh, cool, and never commissioned me to write for them. So that would be kind of my first television foray.
Nice. Well, very, very nice, very nice. So we're going to start a little bit with craft type stuff, and then we'll go into like experience and like getting into the industry and stuff. So when you have an idea, how do you know it's a short story, a television show, a book? What makes you know that it is a television show, that it should be a television show?
I don't know what makes me, I just know.
You just know.
Yeah.
Solid.
It's like pornography, though.
I've written that too.
Successful.
Quite.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Tingle.
Everything that happens to me, I see slightly bent. And so one day, my son wasn't home. He was about 12 at the time. A Russian boy about his age rides up on a red bicycle. Is Michael home? Now, all his friends call him Mike. I said, no, he isn't. And he said, okay, and turned around and paddled away before I could say anything about, what's your name, who are you, etc., etc. Okay. So Mike came home. I said, your friend sounds like he was Russian, came by. I don't know who that is. I said, the kid with the red bicycle. I don't have any friends that have a red bicycle. Is it schoolmates? No. So now I'm thinking, okay, this was kind of cool. So anyway, we never, oh, and of course he asked me, what did he say his name was? Because I got on Michael every time someone would call and leave a message, and I'd say, who is it? Who was it? I don't know, I didn't ask. Anyway, a few months later, I had just in my head come up with an idea of this kid coming back to warn the father that something was going to happen, because the father saved his life when he was younger.
I guess you mean back in time.
Back in time.
Yeah.
And
Twilight Zone.
and my wife was reading the Hollywood Grapevine page in TV Guide, which used to be an amazing page. They talk about productions, things like that. And she said, oh, Nickelodeon's doing an anthology series for kids, horror stuff. You should give them a call. And I said, listen, I've been in the business a while now. I said, by the time it makes the grapevine, you know, they're done. They're finished production, et cetera, et cetera. And as I'm doing this, I'm getting the look that you get when you've been married about 25 years, which is, I don't want to explain to me, I just want you to call. So Monday, I called the office, and he said, geez, you know, it's amazing, you're calling. We need one script.
See, the wife knows.
Bet she never let him forget.
Oh, no, she wouldn't
No,
either.
absolutely, to this day.
To this day.
In fact, she took the entire check. So,
That's how God meant it to be. You earn it, you take
and
it.
that was pretty much what she said. So I wrote it. They said, much like a Charlie Brown, we tried to keep the parents in the background as much as possible. Could you rewrite it? Well, I changed it to an older brother. That was fine. And a few months later, I got a nice big check. And about 3 weeks after that, my son told everybody, my dad wrote, Are You Afraid of the Dark? And that started a relationship with Cinar, who was the production company. So I wrote for Are You Afraid of the Dark, and I wrote for Crisscross,
Very cool.
which a Showtime show that I'm amazed didn't go over a season, but it was a wonderful show to write for. So anyway, sorry for taking up all the time. Peter.
How do you
What
know,
was the question?
how do you know that the idea is a TV show idea as opposed to any other format?
I think, you know, a lot of my stuff is nonfiction, like written fiction. And when it comes to that, I think about, I recently, it was almost a year ago, I interviewed Nicholas Meyer when I asked him, hey, would you like to come to my convention? And
He was a great guest, Anthony. Thank you so much.
no problem.
For a
I'm
great
very
reason.
happy to have him here. And we talked something a little bit about this, and Nicholas Meyer said, time after time, it was my first movie, you know, I had no idea what I was doing, and luckily it turned out well, and you know, critics like it, and people love it, and you know, he said, but it could have been a better movie, because when I was young, I was reading books, and I was watching television, watching movies, but mostly I was reading books, and Steven Spielberg was playing the cameras. So Steven Spielberg has this visual sense that is unequaled by anybody who's sat around and read books as a living. So when I was young, I played with cameras. So generally speaking, if a short idea comes up to me, then I'll think in terms of a short story, or just doing half an hour drama, or related stuff. But I am a much more visual thinker when it comes to storytelling, I think, than I am a literary kind of thinker. I enjoy writing once I'm in the midst of it. I think as anybody will agree who writes for a living or writes for a part-time living, that staring at a cursor that's pointing at you is like fucking torture. But once that gets behind the few
First
letters,
paragraph.
then it's like, right, exactly. It flows.
Horror of a blank page.
Yeah, or a blank page. So I think, generally speaking, those are my two first thoughts of what I might do with an idea.
How visual it is, something
Yes,
that,
right,
if that's,
exactly.
if you're sort of a person, that's what you know you want to write. You know. I like that.
It might not work out. You might write the first
Exactly.
paragraph and know you want to shorten it.
Right,
Or
right.
change it to a novel or do something like that.
There's another project that Doug and I started working on that I've had in my head for a very long time as a graphic novel, which is about a magician in 1966. He's retired, he's turned into a special effects guy, and there's a serial killer in Hollywood that's going around killing women, or people rather, with stage magic apparatus. And
Oh,
he
that's
gets kind of
kinda
pulled
cool.
into the investigation because he's an expert about what they're using. And when I wrote it, I based it on how a magic trick works. And that is, if you're going to disappear something, you can't not reappear it. You also have to do it in a specific manner so that people understand what they're saying. So you have to show an open hand, you close your hand, there's something there, you close your hand, it's something gone. And that's a very difficult format to put into a film or a novel, but it works pretty well as a graphic novel.
Yes.
And the reason why it works pretty well as a graphic novel is because you're able to kind of have not only the visual, not only the dialogue, but also kind of like the thoughts and thought balloons and this, that, and the other. And it also kind of defies the traditional storytelling wars of media, which have kind of coalesced around the hero of a thousand faces sort of mythic journey since Star Wars made that a popular kind of a mode of writing for films. And it was just something that you and I kind of worked on a couple of chapters, and it was like, gosh, it's just not. It just is not hitting the right notes at the right places, because there is something in that, and almost the entire concept revolves around this called persona obscura, that on the cover of the graphic novel or the first issue, if it's if it ever becomes a mix or something, like there is, it's called back to in the last panel of the story, and it kind of explains the whole thing that you've been literally in the midst of a magic trick since you saw the cover and you didn't know it. And I don't think there's any way to do that in a novel. I could never figure it out. I don't know, So some things work much better in a visual presentation than they would ever work in a prose presentation.
It's definitely something that you know as the story creator, that's something that you would feel, yeah, I understand. So, I have a question about, like, if we're talking about a series, and talking about if you were writing the series, if you were in charge of it, or you're trying to come up with it, how are you managing character development, plot development, story arc across a series, as opposed to just one episode? If series are not a thing that you've done, how do you match the characters, the arc, the tone of someone else's world when you are writing an episode for their story?
I wrote a comic series called NAM for 60 issues, and I wrote it.
Let's be honest, an award-winning comic series. Yes.
So I did 60 issues, and I wrote from a book because it showed me what happened each month in Vietnam.
Oh, wow.
And I followed it right along, and I got an editor who wanted to make superheroes and all kinds of other shit, so I quit, and it lasted 5 more issues, and that was it. So I had planned it, each issue from this book. So if it happened in Quadrang, and the second story happened in Da Nang, it didn't matter. I just put it together and made it the same place, and it worked very well.
I actually wrote an entire series. I wrote 3 seasons. I was the only writer on it. And the way that came about is I heard that there was a writing gig. They were looking for 2 writers. I went up, I heard the pitch, and then I heard how much they were paying. It wasn't quite where I needed it to be. I asked them if they could, work with the numbers. He said, not really. I said, okay, well, look, if you need me for anything, give me a call. I'd be more than happy to read it for you once you get into production, but this isn't for me. Okay, got a guaranteed 3 seasons. I said, I know, but I can't, I'm not going to write for that. By the time I got home, there was a message on my answering machine that said, could you call the office? I called the office and they said, let me ask you a question. What if we paid you both salaries? Could you come up with 39 episodes? I said, absolutely. I said, but with 2 writers, it's going to take X amount of time. With 1 writer, I can't write 2 scripts at the same time. It's going to take double. So not only are you paying me double what you wanted to, it's going to take twice as long. Yeah, I know, but we like your stuff. Okay, great. So the show is called The Kids Cafe, and I am thrilled to be able to tell you that it's pretty much lost in history, and you won't get a chance to see it because, gosh, it's dreadful.
What a great way to get rid of the dreadful and get into, the meat of what you made a career out of. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, it was
Absolutely.
39 paychecks, so,
Yeah.
And again, I was thrilled.
I don't have that kind of experience, but definitely in the 2 episodes for the Paddle Pop series I did, there was one of the things Unilever would do, because these were distributed worldwide, they were translated into something like 28 languages. So it took me forever to find copies with English, to put up on my website. So the 2 episodes that I did, okay, so what Unilever does is they make 9 or 12 episodes, however many it was, and they string together 7 or 8 of them into a movie, or 5 or 6 of them, however long they've got time to do it. And so for areas that they can't sell a series into, they'll sell a movie into. So the 2 episodes I did were out of continuity with the rest of the movie. They were just kind of like episodes to fill in the series, because they had to have a certain amount to get the sale.
So standalone.
Standalones, basically.
Yes.
However, I did have to reference things that happen in other episodes
Yes.
and things like that. So, I was given a synopsis of what the entire series was going to be about, what would be used in the movies and for the movie. And then when I wrote mine, in the first couple scenes, I made a reference to what happened in the last episode, and then, did a little foreshadowing of what was coming in the next episode. But I didn't need to do much of it because the only people who were going to see that were the kids who were chopping the cereal. It was not going to be wherever else they were going to put the movie. The other thing that I have done is I've written several pitches for television series for animation. And I can say that that's definitely a different animal, where you're basically in charge of coming up with all the characters, the scenario. You generally want to put in at least 12 to 14 episode ideas to show where it's going to be going. Explain all the relationships between the characters and where they may or may not go. And then, find an artist stupid enough to do drawings for you.
When we did Grand Prix stuff,
Yeah.
we used Marvel stories and Marvel characters.
Right.
So it was just a question of adapting them to the screen,
Right.
and I'm not proud of them.
Yeah, so you got Stan Lee, is what you're saying.
Well, you got whoever was doing it.
Whoever was doing, okay.
So you basically had to create a little show Bible for yourself. Then.
Yeah, basically that, and so I did one that was called Lunar Rescue 6, which was heavily influenced by Thunderbirds because it was, I had all this stuff in my head to sell to what for their Thunderbirds thing. And it was just like emergency on the moon is what it was. So, it was like they would come and rescue people, or, there was medical stuff, there was adventure stuff. And so I had, all the characters delineated, I had all the character sketches done, I had 14 different episode synopsises that were 2 or 3 sentences apiece. And, just, everything that a production company would need to go, this is kind of cool. We could make something out of this. And I'm still hoping somebody will.
So I have one more craft type question. And one of my friends is a movie writer, and he calls it what I call a novelist style. He calls a script writer's voice. How do you maintain your voice? How do you discover your voice? How do you know it's your voice? That kind of anything to do with your experience about your voice in your scripts.
You go.
The short answer is, at the beginning, you steal from everybody.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
You grow up liking somebody's voice and you try to sound like them until you realize sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it isn't, that if you're talking in somebody else's voice, then don't be surprised if they start mistaking you for, and I'm not saying as good as, but, okay, so he's Harlan Ellison, all right, I get it. You know, he's cheap Harlan Ellison. But that's, by the way, who I stole from.
Well, they say steal from the best, so.
I was going to
Steal
say,
like
if you're going to
hers.
steal. So, anyway, and then you kind of develop your own style. I've been always very proud of the fact that people say about my stuff, gee, it sounds like you're talking to me. Well, great, that's exactly what I want. In fact, print-wise, I'm a columnist, so that's, you know, certainly I'm speaking in my own voice, but that's what you do. At the beginning, you just rip off people until you feel comfortable enough to speak as yourself.
I didn't get to do that. When I did NAM, I started off the way I would do it, and I did it that way all the way through, so I guess I developed my own voice.
I would definitely say it's one of those things that's more instinctive for some people, and for some people it's very intentional based on what you read and you imitate. It makes sense to me, at least.
I agree, and I think, you know, rather than necessarily becoming a bargain basement or such, I see it more as like a, you know, a different singer singing a song. And so 200 singers may sing, you know, Yesterday by Paul McCartney, but they don't always sound alike, and they don't, you know, but there's a theme that runs through it. So I have, you know, people whose writing I love. Nick Meyer is one, Lou Bradbury is one, and I tend to try and push a little bit higher appreciation for language itself in what I write, whether it be a visual thing or a literary thing, then that's a lot based on those two. But I don't think I sound like either of them. And I don't think I ever could, you know what I mean? It's like, but I'll sing that damn song, man, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I just finished, about 6 months ago, a 205-page graphic novel for the Naval Institute about the Battle of Philippine Straits. And mostly people are screaming or yelling stuff, so the voice was not important, the visuals were.
Yeah,
Right,
visual.
okay.
That's cool. Why did the Naval Institute want a graphic novel for the Battle of
Well,
Philippines?
they've done several,
Is it for like school purposes or
just the distribution.
Well, it's like a comic.
They paid
Oh,
for it.
Good.
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
I never realized there were like true history graphic novels.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did dig one too.
Oh, that's really neat. Well, I love history. I love maps because it helps me, or photographs because it helps me center it. So a graphic novel actually,
Well, Doug also did the Medal of Honor series.
I did.
that would be cool to see. I didn't even know it was a thing.
And I know Dean Motter's done a bunch of those for Jewish history museums and stuff like that. So it's a valid sort
No,
of.
I've never known, but it does. It sounds like a great idea.
It is. It's a
It's
great.
a good way
It's a great.
to learn history.
Yeah,
And
and it is. I
it's-
mean, it's,
Primates are very visual animals. I'm sure it helps kids a lot.
the beauty of that format, the graphic novel or comic book, is that you do have those three elements that none of which occur in the other derivative elements, which is visual, dialogue, and thought. So in a novel, you can have dialogue and thought and descriptions, but no visuals. In a movie, you can have visuals and dialogue, but no thoughts. Comics is the only one that has all three available to you as a tool. So it's honestly, to me, that's almost always my first thought when it comes to doing something that has visual attachment.
All right, so that means we're up to the point that we've created our pilot episode. We have a couple of lines for our 15 or 14 continuing episodes. What else? What is the next step of the process? How is the breaking in? Are we going to look for an agent? Are we trying to get more visuals to go with it for the story? What is the next step now that you have the writing part of it done, or to what you know will be done? Because that's another part of television writing, is that someone is probably going to come along with some ideas and suggestions and things like that. But what's the next step of taking that idea that's now something written down and taking it to the next place? Where are you taking it?
Well, there's a lot of begging.
That's a lot of begging, yeah. Yeah, that seems to be, industry-wide.
I've never dealt with it. When I did Grand Raid, they came to me.
They came to you, which
Space 99, they came to me. So I never got involved.
Yeah, and I basically was in the same situation, working on Alpha is a good start because it was a top 20 show. So other than that, that JJTX and Friends script, that was my first gig. And so I, you know, haven't had to go that route so much. But again, I've been extremely lucky.
A lot of luck is definitely involved in a lot of this
Oh,
industry,
gosh.
for sure.
Anybody who thinks that they did it by themselves is out of their minds. And sometimes if you're really lucky, especially in writing, is you'll get a director who will add something special to it. And when that happens, you're the one who looks like a genius. I mean, and it wasn't in the script. Ron Oliver did that with one of, I guess it was Chris, yeah, a Chris Cross episode. It was all about a school, not a reform school, it's when your parents sent boarding school. Okay, anyway, in England, and the headmaster is just a rotten guy. And he's constantly trying to throw out two kids, Chris and Cross. Okay, so the headmaster comes up with this idea. Ron Oliver is shooting it, and he makes the fireplace in the background flare up. He says, the headmaster says something like, "I've got this great idea," and I called him up and I said, "Thank you so much. That was freaking brilliant." And again, makes me look good, so it was not in the script. I wish it had been in the script, but it was not in the script. The fireplace wasn't even in the script.
Nice.
So with me, you know, a little bit different. I've only had a couple of times where people came to me and said, "Hey, would you like to write this?" And I would say, "Does it pay?" And they say yes, and I'm like, "I'm right there for you." So, what I've had great success with is, I will call it this for the sake of brevity, is leveraging my network of people that I know who can't help me. These people, I call my friends. I was lucky enough in 1995 to go to a convention in Louisville called Wonderfest, where I met Bob Burns, who was an amazing guy, a film archivist and television genius. He played Tracy the Gorilla in the original Ghostbusters in the 70s on Saturday morning. He was a guy that ate suits for just about everything from 1950 to 1985 or so. And everybody in the world of entertainment knows Bob and loves Bob.
Yep.
Especially back then. Now he's a little bit older and he's a bit more of a recluse. But through Bob, I then met a lot of other people. And these people are friends of mine because we share an enthusiasm for classic monsters, or Jerry Anderson television programs, or this or that or the other. And I would meet one and they would introduce me to another, and eventually, you know, I get to the point where I'm asking Sir Richard Taylor from What a Workshop to write a foreword for my book about one of the designers from Thunderbirds. He's like, "Oh, I can't buy it," you know. And that leads me to a place where I'm able to pitch him for that. Now, again, that was not a successful pitch for me, but he liked it, and you know, it's led to other things, and led me down other roads. Lee Stringer, again, is somebody who we have a particular affection for Jerry Anderson, and when he was doing this animation stuff, he really thought of me because we had sat around in restaurants, in fact with Paul several times, and Doug, and talked about how much we liked The Magnificent Seven, or this or that or the other. And it just becomes one of those things where it's like, okay, so my friend then thinks of me when somebody says, "Hey, we're doing a Magnificent Seven pastiche. Do you know someone who can write it?" I did.
Yeah, I do.
So what I suggest doing, especially in this information age, where you can reach out to just about anybody in the world with a 14-letter combination .com, is to find somebody who clearly has the same enthusiasm as you do. the same nostalgia that you do for things that mean something to you, and establish, contact and a relationship with them, and say, hey, I hear that you like Vincent Price movies. I'm a huge Vincent Price fan, and I thought you might enjoy this, blah, 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 whatever. And, I am the least successful of the three men sitting up here talking about writing for television for you. But I know that they have all had the same experience, that you work best with the people who understand you best and understand the things that motivate you, and that they are similar to the things that motivate them.
However, I suspect in another couple of years, when you name Vincent Price, people will know who you're talking about.
You may well be correct, sir, and that's a sad thing. But, TCM, as long as they're around, they'll show Lauren, they'll show The Tingler, and they'll show, all that good stuff, and hopefully somebody younger than us will take a look at it.
When Jerry Anderson passed, I was working for Famous Monsters, and I called Phil, and I said, I know a guy. Now, mind you, this would have happened without me. He was probably already in talks with Phil when it happened, but that's what you do. I mean, I know this guy who knows Jerry Anderson backwards and forwards. Because I don't. I mean, I liked his stuff, but he's the guy right there.
And I appreciate it. I mean, that worked out into four articles in a single issue that paid me.
I don't think anybody has written that much in the recent years as you did. I was going, and again, I wrote one page. I wrote a 1 or 2 page column, but I remember getting that issue and just page 1, 2, 3, 33. It was him.
It was fun. It was good stuff. And yeah, that's just one of those. It creates synergy that you can't do any other way, I think.
Right. I agree.
Well, that's definitely covers my question about networking, and I appreciate that. It's definitely about relationship building and networking, and knowing someone who knows someone who knows someone
Right.
who can vouch for what they do.
But
So,
it can't just be for the sake of getting a job. I mean, it's just not a network. That's, a bunch of people strung together by,
yeah.
A similar work environment or something.
So I have a question. So now we're on to what is it like being the writer on a show that is currently being produced? Are you on set? Are you at the studio if it's animated? What is it like being the writer?
I never had the experience. I did animation without seeing anything, and I did Space Out Here.
Well, that is definitely a type of experience. So if you could just give it to them and let it go, some people would definitely prefer that.
That was the way. I sat home and did it myself.
Nice
Okay.
deal. With Alf, I became the story editor in the 4th season. I had worked there the 1st season. I did then merchandising for the 2nd and 3rd season, which is a trip. Anthony's done it. So I had done that, and then my friend Paul called me and said, could you come out? I need you. Our story editor walked, and I need you to finish out his time. I said, all right, wait a minute, let me get my scheduling book. And I said, when do you need me? And he said, Tuesday. And I said, all right, Tuesday the what? He said, Tuesday the next. I said, it's Friday. He said, yeah. I said, you heard that I just got married, right? I mean, I'm actually sleeping with a woman every night now. I said,
Big change.
yeah. I said, well, this is after being a geek and figuring I'd never know the touch of a woman. So I said, and I know you sent a wedding gift, so you're not. He says, look, the good news is you'd be out here 16 days, back home 13, 16, 13, 16. I said, all right, so went out, and the pay is insane. When I sent a check back to my wife through regular snail mail back then, I sent her, I think, 2/3 of my check. I kept the third out there. And she called me up and she said, I got the check, you gotta keep something out there for yourself. And I said, that's 2/3, I kept 1/3. She said, this is 2/3 of your check? And I said, yeah. She said, you have my permission to stay out there as long as you want. So anyway, let me cut to the chase, I'm sorry. So what that involves, my contract was the best contract ever. Don't show up Monday. Don't show up Tuesday. Show up Wednesday at 4:30. Now what they're doing there is they've had these writers working on this script. They want new eyes to look at this script and come up with, anytime there's a lag, they want somebody who has no idea. Finish the script, which once took 90 minutes and the other time took 16 hours. So I mean, that was it. But finish the script and you're done for the week.
Oh, that's excellent.
So
Where do I get that job?
I would show up. I love being on set when they're shooting. So I would show up Thursday and Friday because I was allowed to show up, but I would do that for free, just in case there was a problem delivering a line. This way they could have a writer there. And I would just sit in my office, the intercom would go on. I needed a short joke. Okay, I do that. That would be it for the day. But I wanted to make sure that there was a writer on the set. So anyway, so that's what story editing is.
Love
You know.
that.
It's a good deal. You don't get any credit
But the
for it.
money's really good.
Yeah, but
So
you
there's that.
you could do 99% of the changes, and the writer who wrote the script will get the credit, the screen credit.
When I worked for Disney, with Linda as an editor, under contract, we had to be approved by the animation department, by the film department, so on and so forth. And if a story came to the animation department that they liked, they would use it for something. So they used one of my Darkwing Ducks. I didn't have any idea what they were doing. And they did the same thing with a Roger Rabbit story. So they would just get a note saying that happened. They would not use the story for the comic. Send me a check and that would be it.
That sounds pretty nice
That's
too.
a nice deal.
Yeah.
I have not had experience with that, however, I am friends with a lot of television writers, and the way that drama stuff is done these days, hour-long drama stuff is, it's all in a room. Right?
Yeah.
So you've got a showrunner who sits in an office next to the room, and then you got a room full of writers. The showrunner sits down, okay, here's the bullet points for the entire season. You guys hash out everything between. It's almost like animation,
Oof.
where it's like, you know, they do key drawings and then they get the in-betweeners, right? So the writers are the in-betweeners, generally speaking. And they will take this and say, all right, so we've got 20 episodes or however many, 10 episodes, let's say. And this has to happen between them and that. So we need to divide it here, 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 and here. We need a backstory for this character. We need an understory for this character. We need complete atomic bomb dropped in the penultimate episode, next to the last episode, and then we need blah, 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 blah. So they hit all these bullet points, and it sounds a little bit dry, and it can be, but I think, you know, working in the environment where you've got 6 or 8 people in the writer's room, where everybody kind of like throws things off of each other and bounces back and forth, can actually be very creative as well.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
But
absolutely.
the problem is, if they finish the season
yeah.
with a cliffhanger or a problem and don't get renewed,